Why Albert Wesker killed the man who made him. When Albert Wesker finally meets the man who engineered his life, he puts a hand through his chest. Oswald Spencer shaped Wesker's education, ideology, infection, and even his desire to find him. Then Spencer announced that he wanted to become a god. Wesker looked at the dying man in a wheelchair and decided the position had opened Spencer's secret children. To understand the murder, we have to understand the Wesker plan. Spencer's obsession began with the progenitor virus. After studying the stairway of the sun in West Africa, he concluded that the virus could accelerate human evolution. Most hosts died. Rare, compatible individuals gained extraordinary traits. Spencer did not want to cure disease or share those traits with humanity. He believed the world should be remade under the control of an advanced species, with himself at the center. Umbrella Pharmaceuticals gave him money, infrastructure, and secrecy. Biological weapons funded research that also served his eugenic goal. But Spencer had a problem. He was aging. The virus promised human evolution in theory, while his own body continued moving toward death. He needed suitable candidates, a way to shape them, and a method for identifying whoever survived. The Wesker plan was his answer. Umbrella selected hundreds of children, born to parents considered intellectually superior. The children were given the surname Wesker in honor of the project's chief researcher. They were placed in controlled environments, educated according to Spencer's values, and monitored over years. They were not all raised together inside one visible academy. The point was to guide lives while hiding the hand doing it. How Albert was programmed. Albert was one candidate. Alex Wesker was another. The children received elite education and ideological conditioning designed to produce ambition, intelligence, and contempt for ordinary limitation. Later, they were administered an experimental virus intended to select the people compatible with Spencer's evolutionary vision. Most died. The official file says that, of the Wesker children, only Albert and Alex survived the initial selection. Even those survivors did not become the heirs Spencer imagined in the same way. Alex later discovered that the virus was killing her. Her response was to pursue transfer of consciousness into another body, leading to the experiments on Sajum Island in Revelations 2. Albert's response was power. He had already built a career inside Umbrella. As a young researcher, he trained with William Birkin under James Marcus. He participated in the company's viral programs, transferred to intelligence work, and eventually became captain of the Raccoon Police Department's STARS Alpha team. That police career was not a break from Umbrella, it was infiltration. Wesker used STARS to monitor Raccoon City and later lured both teams into the Spencer Mansion outbreak. Umbrella wanted combat data showing how trained personnel performed against bioorganic weapons. Wesker turned his own officers into test subjects. He planned to steal the resulting data, fake his death, and leave Umbrella for a rival organization. During the Mansion incident, he released the T-002 Tyrant. The creature impaled him. This was part of his plan, at least in the broad sense. Birkin had supplied him with an experimental virus. Wesker expected it to revive and enhance him after apparent death. It worked. He gained superhuman strength, speed, regeneration, and the eyes that have never encountered a pair of sunglasses they did not respect. From that point, Wesker increasingly believed he had transcended ordinary humanity through his own preparation. He manipulated events from the shadows, gathered viral samples, used organizations against one another, and built toward a project that would impose evolutionary selection on the entire planet. Then he found Spencer. By 2006, Umbrella had collapsed publicly. Its crimes were exposed, its assets scattered, and the founder had retreated to an estate in Europe. Chris Redfield and Jill Valentine, working with the BSAA, followed intelligence to the mansion. The meeting Spencer planned. Wesker arrived first. Spencer was old, physically weak, and connected to medical equipment. This is the man who imagined ruling a new species, reduced to waiting in a chair while younger creations moved through the world. Wesker demanded answers. Spencer explained the project. Albert learned that his surname was not family identity, but a label shared by test subjects. His intelligence, education, career path, and even his desire to find Spencer had been influenced by design. Spencer had included a psychological mechanism in the plan. The surviving Weskers would feel compelled to seek him out, bringing the successful specimens back to their creator. That revelation attacks the one thing Albert values more than power, the belief that the power proves his personal superiority. If Spencer selected his parents, shaped his environment, supplied the ideology, and arranged the virus, then how much of Albert's ascent belongs to Albert? Was his rebellion against Umbrella an independent act or another test result? Was his obsession with evolution his own conclusion or an idea planted before he could evaluate it? Did he find Spencer because he outsmarted the founder, or because the founder programmed the desire to return? Why Wesker killed his creator? Wesker cannot tolerate being somebody else's outcome, so he reframes the story immediately. Spencer says he intends to become a god. Wesker looks at the dying man and sees failure. The founder possessed vision and resources, but lacked the body to complete his own evolution. Albert has the enhanced body, the intelligence, and the will. If Spencer created the conditions that produced him, then Spencer's weakness becomes evidence that the creation has surpassed the creator. Wesker kills him and claims the godhood Spencer wanted. This is partly revenge. Spencer manipulated his entire life and infected him as a selection experiment. Murder removes the person who can define Albert as a subject. It is also contempt. Wesker respects power. Spencer's age and dependence reveal him as biologically ordinary. The man preaching forced evolution could not force his own body to survive, and it is appropriation. Wesker does not reject Spencer's ideology after learning it was imposed on him. He adopts it more completely. He does not say human beings should be free from experiments like the Wesker plan. He says he is the successful experiment and therefore deserves to run the next one. That is why the murder is not liberation in any healthy sense. Albert kills his abuser and inherits the abuse as a worldview. The Ouroboros project proves it. The dream Wesker stole. Wesker works with Tricell and researcher Excelligione to develop Ouroboros from progenitor-based research. The virus is designed to separate supposedly worthy hosts from the unworthy. Compatible people may gain extraordinary abilities. Most humans will be consumed into black, tentacled masses. Wesker plans to disperse Ouroboros through the atmosphere, infecting the world at once. He calls this evolution. In practice, it is the Wesker plan expanded from hundreds of children to billions of strangers. Spencer selected candidates based on their parents, shaped their lives, infected them, and accepted mass death to find survivors. Albert intends to expose the planet, accept mass death, and rule whoever survives. He has not escaped the structure, he has scaled it. This is one reason his line about complete global saturation became so memorable. The delivery is gloriously theatrical, but the idea is horrifyingly literal. There is no consent, treatment plan, or second attempt. Humanity becomes one giant compatibility test. Wesker believes surviving the earlier test gives him authority to administer the next one. Spencer's death also reveals a contradiction in Albert's self-image. He believes power creates legitimacy. If he is stronger than Spencer, he deserves Spencer's dream. But the strength came from the experiment Spencer arranged and the virus Birkin supplied. Wesker's independence depends on tools created by other people. Even his body requires a stabilizing serum. In Resident Evil 5, he needs regular doses of P30 to maintain control of his abilities. Too little or too much can destabilize him. Chris and Shiva exploit that dependency by injecting him with an overdose. The self-declared god has a medication schedule. This does not make him weak. It makes him exactly what he refuses to admit, a biological system with limits. His murder of Spencer cannot remove those limits. It can only silence the person who explains where they came from. Chris and Jill arrive moments later. They find Spencer dead and Wesker standing over him. The confrontation ties 3 generations of the story together. Spencer created Umbrella's ideology. Wesker betrayed stars inside the mansion. Chris and Jill survived and spent years pursuing the organization that destroyed Raccoon City. Jill sacrifices herself by tackling Wesker through a window to save Chris. Both fall from the cliff. Wesker survives and takes Jill. He keeps her in cryogenic suspension, discovers her T-virus antibodies, uses her body to help refine Ouroboros, and later controls her with P30. This is where Wesker becomes Spencer most completely. Minutes after killing the man who turned children into test subjects, Albert takes another person, preserves her body, extracts biological value from her survival, and removes her freedom. He does not notice the repetition because he believes superiority changes the morality of the act. Spencer experimenting on Albert was wrong because Spencer was weaker. Albert experimenting on Jill is justified because Albert is stronger. That is not a moral system. It is a throne with laboratory equipment. Alex Wesker offers a useful comparison. She also learns she is part of the Wesker plan. She also internalizes Spencer's obsession with overcoming mortality. But because her body is dying, she focuses on transferring consciousness into a compatible host. On same island, Alex subjects residents to fear, T-phobos infection, and selection. She chooses Natalia Korda as the vessel for her mind. Again, a surviving Wesker responds to being manufactured by manufacturing somebody else. Albert and Alex take different routes toward the same conclusion. The self must continue, and other bodies are acceptable material. Spencer's greatest success is not that two children survive his virus. It is that both survivors reproduce his logic even while hating him. That makes the phrase, "the man who made him," accurate in a psychological sense. Spencer does not create Albert's genes from nothing. Albert has biological parents selected for the program. He develops his own experiences, skills, rivalries, and decisions. Saying Spencer literally built him in a tube removes the disturbing part. Albert is manipulated through ordinary life. Education can be guided, opportunities can be arranged, information can be withheld, ideology can be normalized. Then a virus can select the body that survives all of it. Spencer makes Albert by controlling the environment in which Albert makes himself. That is why the truth produces rage rather than simple surprise. Every achievement remains real, but its meaning changes. Wesker did become a brilliant researcher. He did infiltrate stars. He did plan his escape from Umbrella. He did survive the experimental virus. He did build an international network and outmaneuver rivals. Learning that Spencer arranged the starting conditions does not erase those actions. It prevents Albert from treating them as proof he stands outside causality. He is still somebody's son, subject, student, and host. Killing Spencer is an attempt to cut those words out of the story. It fails because Albert's next choices reveal the influence more clearly than Spencer's speech ever could. He announces a hierarchy of worthy and unworthy people. He uses viral selection. He treats mass death as evolutionary necessity. He claims godhood. These are Spencer's ideas with better tailoring. The murder also shows why Wesker does not keep Spencer alive for information. A more strategic villain might interrogate him about hidden facilities, progenitor data, or other Wesker candidates. Or Albert has spent years gathering research and believes he already possesses what matters. The emotional need to establish dominance outweighs the informational value of the founder. For once, Wesker is not 10 steps ahead. He is a manipulated child standing in front of the person who named the experiment. The violence is immediate because the wound is immediate. Spencer even appears pleased that Albert has arrived. The surviving subject validates the plan. He can look at Wesker's power and imagine it as his legacy. Albert denies him that satisfaction by making the creator physically subordinate, but murder is still a form of recognition. Spencer remains important enough that Wesker needs him dead. If Albert truly felt untouched by the revelation, he could walk away. He cannot. His later death completes the irony. After Chris and Sheva overdose him with the stabilizing serum, Wesker falls into a volcano and absorbs Ouroboros. The virus does not recognize his claimed divinity. It mutates him into the same kind of unstable mass his project creates in other hosts. He retains enough intelligence to fight, but his controlled human form is gone. The man who wanted to choose evolution is physically rewritten by it. Chris and Sheva destroy him with rocket launchers. Spencer dies because his creation rejects the creator. Wesker dies because his creation does not obey him either. That is the recurring lesson of Resident Evil's viruses. A researcher can design the test, choose the host, and declare the desired result. Living systems still produce consequences beyond the plan. Spencer thought Albert would return as proof of his genius. Albert returned as the hand that killed him. Albert thought Ouroboros would recognize him as the ruler of a new species. Ouroboros turned him into another mutation inside a volcano. So why did Albert Wesker kill the man who made him? Before answering in one line, it helps to trace how often Albert's life trained him to respond to dependence with betrayal. As a young researcher, he and William Birkin work under James Marcus at the Umbrella Executive Training School. Marcus is one of Umbrella's founders and a central figure in T-virus development. He is brilliant, cruel, and increasingly difficult for Spencer to control. When Spencer decides Marcus has become inconvenient, Wesker and Birkin participate in the operation that removes him. Marcus is murdered, and the younger researchers inherit access to parts of his work. That event teaches Albert a clean lesson about umbrella hierarchy. The mentor exists until the student or executive no longer needs him. Birkin later repeats the same struggle from the other side. He believes G belongs to him, fears Umbrella will take it, and tries to bargain with the United States government. Umbrella sends a recovery team. Birkin is shot and uses his own virus to survive. Wesker watches organizations turn scientists into replaceable containers while he quietly prepares his own exit. At the mansion, he betrays Stars and Umbrella simultaneously. His officers become combat data. Umbrella expects his loyalty. A rival organization expects stolen research. Wesker intends to make every side useful and remain owned by none. That pattern looks like independence, until Spencer reveals that even the drive to escape control grew inside a controlled life. Was Wesker ever free? The Wesker plan did not need to dictate each decision. It only needed to shape the values producing them. Teach a child that ordinary humanity is weak. Reward intelligence, ambition, and emotional distance. Place him inside a company where betrayal proves competence. Expose him to research promising biological superiority. Then select the body that survives infection. Albert can make every local choice freely and still arrive at the destination Spencer designed. This is the difference between mind control and conditioning. Spencer does not operate Albert like a puppet. He constructs the game board, teaches him what winning means, and waits for the strongest piece to cross it. The psychological urge to seek Spencer is the final safeguard. A successful Wesker candidate is supposed to return, allowing the founder to identify and perhaps use the result. From Spencer's perspective, Albert's arrival confirms the system. From Albert's perspective, it contaminates every achievement. Even his curiosity is compromised. That is why Spencer's physical condition matters so much in the scene. If the founder were young, enhanced, and visibly powerful, Albert might treat him as a genuine rival. Instead, he finds an elderly man sustained by equipment. Spencer has spent decades searching for a route beyond humanity and remains trapped inside the most ordinary human fact: time. Albert does not respond with compassion because his upbringing gave weakness no moral claim. He evaluates Spencer by Spencer's own standard and finds him unworthy. The creator loses the test he designed. There is a popular tendency to read The Killing as Albert discovering he is a clone and eliminating his original. That is not what the files say. The Wesker children are selected children born to superior parents, not identical copies of Spencer. They share a project surname and ideological upbringing. Albert's body is his own, which is precisely why compatibility matters. Spencer needs real genetic variation to find survivors. This makes the plan more plausible and more invasive. Albert does not have a hidden original body explaining his identity. He has real parents whose role in his life has been replaced by a corporate selection process. Spencer takes the language of family and turns it into classification. Hundreds of unrelated children become Weskers because one project requires a label. Albert later does something similar to humanity. In his Ouroboros plan, individual histories disappear beneath two categories: compatible and unworthy. He has learned to see people the way the project saw him. Alex Wesker shows that the conditioning was not a perfect script. Her intelligence and survival produce a different strategy. She studies fear through T-Phobos, pursues consciousness transfer, and selects Natalia as a vessel. Albert prefers direct biological domination and global viral exposure. Their methods differ because they remain individuals. Their moral assumption is shared because Spencer's education worked. Both believe an exceptional self has the right to occupy the future at somebody else's expense. This is why killing Spencer does not end the Wesker plan. A plan can continue through values after the planner dies. Albert becomes proof and revenge at the same time. He proves that Spencer could cultivate a survivor capable of extraordinary power. He takes revenge by denying Spencer control of that survivor. Then he validates Spencer's deepest belief by treating all other people as disposable stages of evolution. The murder is therefore satisfying to Albert on three levels. Personally, he punishes the man who manipulated his life. Philosophically, he declares strength more important than authorship. It does not matter who arranged the experiment if the result can kill the experimenter. Politically, he removes the only person with a plausible claim to stand above him in Umbrella's hierarchy and evolutionary project. But none of those levels gives him what he actually wants, which is a self without origin. Every person inherits genes, language, education, and values. Albert treats dependence as humiliation because Spencer taught him that superior beings should stand alone. The desire to be uncreated is itself part of what was created. That contradiction explains his grandiosity after the murder. He does not merely say he will continue the research. He speaks as though he has discovered his rightful divinity. The bigger the claim, the less room remains for the injured subject beneath it. Wesker's later treatment of Excella repeats the same defense. She believes she will rule beside him and helps develop Ouroboros. He flatters her usefulness, then infects and discards her when she becomes inconvenient. He reenacts Spencer and Marcus, mentor and student, executive and researcher. Relationships last only while they increase his power. Even Jill's control device is an expression of that worldview. A capable person is valuable, so remove the ability to choose where the capability is directed. Albert knows exactly what it means to have a life arranged around somebody else's goal. He does it anyway. That is what separates explanation from excuse. The Wesker plan explains why Albert equates power with worth and control with godhood. It does not remove responsibility for the people he betrays, infects, or kills. If anything, the moment with Spencer gives him the information required to break the cycle. He chooses inheritance. The timing makes that choice impossible to miss. Chris and Jill arrive almost immediately after Spencer dies. They do not hear the explanation or witness Albert's shock. They see the final product standing over the founder's body. For them, Wesker appears fully in control. For the audience, the flashback reveals that his most decisive gesture follows the moment somebody else explains him. That gap fits Albert perfectly. He presents every action as calculation, but humiliation and anger repeatedly drive him. Chris becomes an obsession because surviving the mansion denies Wesker a clean victory. Spencer becomes disposable the moment his words make Albert feel like property. Excella becomes a monster when she has finished being useful. The cold exterior does not mean emotion is absent. It means Albert regards his emotions as evidence of destiny. Even his hatred of Chris becomes part of the Ouroboros finale. Instead of preserving distance and completing global release, Wesker repeatedly stops to prove superiority to the person who has frustrated him since 1998. The supposed god still needs one former subordinate to acknowledge the result. That is Spencer's final influence too. Albert learned to measure worth through comparison and selection. There must be superior and inferior subjects, a winner and a discarded population. Why Spencer still won. Killing Spencer makes Albert the winner of the first test. Forcing Ouroboros on the world is his attempt to make everybody else take it. He never considers that a test designed by an abuser can be refused instead of won. That is the choice Resident Evil 5 ultimately gives Chris and Sheva. They do not defeat Wesker by proving they are a more evolved species. They cooperate, exploit his dependence on the stabilizing serum, and refuse his premise that survival grants the right to decide who else deserves it. Wesker sees partnership as weakness, because no single person controls it. The series repeatedly turns that supposed weakness against him. Jill saves Chris. Chris and Sheva save each other. People Albert classifies as ordinary survive through bonds his worldview cannot measure. Spencer manufactured candidates in isolation and waited for one superior result. Albert inherited that loneliness as proof of greatness. By the time the rockets reach him, there is nobody beside him to disagree. Because Spencer's truth threatened the foundation of his identity. Albert believed he had risen above humanity through intelligence, will, and power. Spencer revealed that the path had been selected, the ideology planted, and the virus administered as part of a program. Killing him allowed Wesker to claim authorship of the result. It punished the manipulation, removed a rival claimant to godhood, and let Albert redefine himself as the successor rather than the subject. But he never rejects what Spencer made him to believe. He only rejects Spencer's right to stand above him. That is why the scene is not the moment Wesker becomes free. It is the moment Spencer's experiment becomes self-directing. The old man wanted to create a superior human who would inherit his vision. Albert wanted to prove nobody created him. Putting a hand through Spencer's chest proves both men wrong. Wesker can kill the man who shaped his life. He cannot kill the shape. That is Spencer's final victory and final failure. Albert carries the vision farther than the founder ever could, but he carries it as an enemy who refuses to credit the source. Spencer gets an heir without loyalty. Wesker gets independence without freedom. The murder ends the relationship physically and proves how completely it survives psychologically.